Well, FP1's always a busy day, a Friday at a Formula One race, and Barcelona, absolutely no exception. Lots of new bits to try on most of the cars as well. We'll be talking to Scarbs about that in upcoming videos. All upgrades to be expected at this point of the season, and some of them obviously bearing fruit, some of them not. Most notably, Sebastian Vettel reasonably quick towards the end of the day in the Aston Martin with much modified side pods, but we're getting ahead of ourselves with that because the headline news is that it's pretty much the same as so far this season. Ferrari versus Red Bull, very, very closely matched on both light fuel and heavy fuel loads. The other headline is that today, unlike Miami, Ferrari did a lot of homework, a lot of running on full, heavy loads of fuel, and they did split the workload. They had Carlos Sainz on the soft tyre and Charles Leclerc on the medium tyre. Very different from their approach in Miami, where it was just got to get the pole, stay on the soft. So that's good news for Ferrari fans. A lot more homework there, but we'll get onto that in a minute, because the other headline news is that Mercedes continue to improve, and on both light fuel and fuel runs, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton looking pretty strong now. Both of them still having to compromise, or the team having to compromise around bouncing, mid-corner bouncing, particularly through turn 3, the all-important long right-hander leading up to Forza straight at the exit of 3, and that corner is really critical to a decent lap around Barcelona. And it's also a corner which can define your race as well. It can win or lose your race in terms of how much tyre temperature how much you overheat the tyres through there. The rear tyres get a real punishing through there. Again, more of that in a minute. But let's have a look, first of all, try and do the day in chronological order. Relatively late start to Formula One these days. They're both afternoon sessions, neither of them coinciding either with qualifying or the race, but nonetheless somewhere near it or thereabouts. So this is the soft tyre middle phase of FP1 once everybody had kind of run their cars in. Although I've got to say, there was some strange things going on. Red Bull had Yuri Vips in Sergio Perez's car for this first session, and viewers of this channel will know I've been a Yuri Vips fan for a long time now, right from Formula 3. Did a video with him relatively recently last year in F2. Been a big fan, but I didn't get that. I don't get putting Yuri Vips in Sergio Perez's car in FP1, and nothing wrong with it in terms of did he make any mistakes, did he damage the car? No, of course he didn't, and Sergio's standing there on the pit wall watching it all. But it took, nonetheless, 25 minutes out of Sergio's FP2 as he got up to speed. And as I've said before, there's nobody better out there probably as a number 2 than Sergio Perez in terms of getting homework done, pushing the car a little bit harder in a couple of areas where Max wouldn't want to do that on a Friday. I just thought that was a strange decision by Red Bull to do that at this point of the season. It's just kind of odd, really, particularly on a day when Ferrari were doing such a good job with their homework as well. I've got to say, Yuri wasn't very quick either, and he was going into 3, which is a corner we're going to focus on a lot this weekend because, again, regular viewers of this channel will know that, in my opinion, the change of direction out of turn 2, which is the left-hander out of the first chicane, as you prepare for this long right-hander turn 3, is absolutely critical. You can have a really short corner going in there. Typically, Max and Lewis just brilliant over the years through there, and Michael Schumacher as well. Or you can come out and then really load the car up as you do a wider entry into 3, and load up the left rear. And to me, it's the really subtle drivers, the supple drivers who get this transition in the middle of turn 2, get the car slightly straighter, come out more or less on a straight line, and then don't have any of that pitch going into 3. And that not only looks after the rear tyres more, but it actually makes the corner shorter, A, and B, it gives you a much better run through 3 anyway, because you haven't got as much load going into the car as you're turning into the corner, and you can sort of straighten the wheel as you're going through. So to me, that's always been a brilliant part of the Barcelona circuit, and I love watching on the hill behind the chicane there as they're watching from the exit. You never see that angle on TV, fairly typical these days. You don't see the really good angles because the TV is showing other great shots for advertising, for the look of Formula One. But in terms of actually seeing what the drivers do, how they get that change of direction, we don't really see it very much. But what you can see with the camera they got lowered down is how wide some drivers are still taking that corner, making it a long corner. Carlos Sainz, over the years, has been a fairly typical example of a driver who does make that corner, turn 3 that is, go on quite long. He comes out of 2, and then he's got this up to the middle of the track almost, and then nice wide entry into 3. But guess what today? He actually looked, in my opinion, better than Charles Leclerc through there. I thought Charles Leclerc looked really what can I say? It's not a word I thought I would ever use in the context of Charles driving, but a little bit messy going in there because he's taking an unbelievably wide line, a very, very late turn-in point, and making the corner incredibly long. Now, he did that on his quickest lap on soft tyres, and he's quickest overall in both sessions. Quickest lap on soft tyres in FP2. I didn't really see it in FP1. And so you got to say, well, if it works for Charles Leclerc, it's got to be quick. But mark my words, my prediction is if he continues to do that, he will use up that left rear much faster than Max Verstappen will on the Red Bull. And that, I think, is going to be critical for the race. It looks already like a pretty difficult race in terms of getting the tyres to remain consistent and to prevent the dreaded deg on all compounds. So that will be a really interesting thing to me to see whether or not Charles continues to do that. It may be really quick for one lap, and he may be feeling so confident in that Ferrari now that he can just sort of do wide entry, get in on the power early, and all that stuff. And I was just surprised because that's not normally how he drives, and he looked like he was asking a lot of the car on that specific piece of road. Anyway, I wasn't going to mention that a bit later on, but I couldn't resist it. So getting back into these early runs, yeah, Charles, that 19.8, that's on FP1. As I say, I didn't really see what he was doing into 3 on that lap, but Carlos, I thought, looked very, very good in FP1. 19.9, as you can see, a little bit slower and a bit slower on the straight, which probably accounts for that 10th of a second. Charles, make the point, Ferrari, good in a straight line, good over the lap, and a consistent drivable car, it would appear, in terms of the long runs they were able to do a bit later on. And Max Verstappen, you'd say, wow, 20.1, that's what happened there. Well, he was really, really good on sectors 1 and 2, and then caught traffic in sector 3, and then just bailed out of the lap, basically. So he still did a 20.1, really good. And there you see Mercedes. 2 patterns there. One, Mercedes not that far away. They would say, oh, well, you know, we're still back of the leading group. But, you know, to my eye, that and feel that is closer than they have been any time this year. So that's not bad for me. But look at that. George, again, 3/10 quicker than Lewis. Well, that's a lot, 3/10. I mean, he wasn't 3/10 quicker later on. But every time they went out today, bar one run, which we'll get on to, George was just that tad quicker than Lewis. And there was we'll fast forward to the beginning of FP2 when Lewis still hadn't really got the feel for the car on the soft tyre. And he did another couple of runs on the soft tyre just to sort of get a feel for how they were going. They're obviously playing around with trying to get rid of the bouncing and all the compromises they got to play with. And there was a moment when Lewis's race engineer got on the radio to him and said, okay, I think we need to get on with the program now. In other words, stop faffing around on soft tyres and light fuel. Let's get some fuel in the car and do some homework. It's unusual to hear somebody say that to Lewis for a start. And then he said, you know, and you're almost there, only a hundredth or second, a couple of hundredths slower than George, which would have been like, a knife. I mean, there's nothing worse than being a couple of hundredths of a second slower than your teammate, especially if you're Lewis Hamilton. So it goes on, you know, and you may think where I'm coming from is a fairly romantic place, which is that, you know, Lewis has done a massive amount as a racing driver for himself, obviously, but for his teams and also for Formula One. And I just think it's kind of sad to see this going on because, you know, regardless of the face that he will put on, he will absolutely hate being slower consistently than George Russell. I can tell you that. I've said it before. So, yeah, that was FP1. Fernando Alonso looked pretty good. Didn't do many laps, but 20.7. Not bad, eh? You know, then Lewis Hamilton territory. Lando looked a bit messy as well. And indeed, you know, he was sort of taking quite a wide line in there and on the power a little bit more aggressively than he normally is. I don't know what that was. I mean, when we last saw Lando, he was climbing out of a wrecked McLaren in Miami. Not really his fault. I mean, I said speed differential. Pierre's saying, well, you know, maybe I should have got out of the way a little bit more. But anyway, it's not often, touch wood, recently we've seen Lando in trouble. But then he ran into the gravel trap, or through the gravel trap in the sort of middle part of the lap, you know, before turn 8, I guess it is. And then had a big moment coming out of 9 in FP2 over the gravel trap and then damaged the floor, and that was it for his day. So we don't have much data and stuff on McLaren, but that's why I put Lando in there for FP1, because 21.2, he's in sort of, you know, he's just ahead of the AlphaTauris already. Pierre Gasly again looking reasonably good in the AlphaTauri, but the AlphaTauri not the car that it was last year in terms of where it is on the grid, but you know, give or take a race or two, they'll be okay, I think. So that was that. And the other thing we saw in the back end of FP1 was the running with fuel on the car, in the car, and you can see there in blue their fastest lap. So obviously at the beginning of their runs, obviously when the tyres are fresh, and you can see how close it is really. Carlos, this is where Carlos looked really good, 25.0. And he's a Spaniard in Spain, don't forget. They're loving him there in a Ferrari, doing a great job. Very neat and tidy. 25.0, 25.3, 29.3. That's the sort of, you know, cool the tyres a bit. 25.8, 25.6. That's a good run, eh? Top speed 303. Charles Leclerc, by contrast, 0.3 slower when they were pushing the tyres. But pushing the tyres didn't seem to hurt it for Carlos. So that was an interesting point, I thought. And then basically a little bit slower on that run, 306 kilometers an hour on the straight nonetheless. But I don't think that was, you know, I think if you take those two runs, that's pretty impressive for Ferrari. Max did that long run, 25.3 was his quickest, but again, looked pretty good. I mean, you've got to say the Red Bull looks really good. And I just don't think, there's often you hear these phrases, you know, where they sandbagging. I don't think anybody ever sandbags. You do what you do, but you don't do it intentionally to mislead anybody else. But to me, Red Bull are quicker than Max looked, if you can make sense of that. And here's okay, look, Lewis Hamilton 25.3, George Russell 25.5. Yes, that was back end of FP1 on fuel. And so that would have been, you know, a bit of porpoising here and there, but probably the car feeling a little bit better on heavy load, I would suggest, on that thing. And then we went to FP2, and at the beginning of FP2, more or less the beginning, they ran soft tyres, as they do, just to sort of see where we're at with qualifying. So that's how they were, the top 10, if you top left to the right and then the second row. So imagine if that was the grid, six car front row, mega. Charles Leclerc, 19.6. And that was just a great lap. But to me, that was a ragged lap. That was a lot of curb, and that was a lot of loading of the left rear in a way that you don't, well, you see the curb cut with Charles, but you don't see that much aggression on turn-in and the way he was really leaning on the car. And you know, that to me, okay, it's one lap, but if he drives like that in the race, it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Max Verstappen over the race distance. George and Lewis, I mean, Lewis did that 19.8 and then George did a 19.7. I mean, it's just classic, isn't it? But both, I mean, that's not bad, is it? 19.7, 19.8 on light fuel. Mercedes will be thinking, yeah, you know, we've chipped and chipped away, and now we have a car that's more or less drivable. And I think that's impressive. I mean, Lewis's top speed, I think, is more representative of the gap. I'm not sure if George was in a tow when he got that 314, but 310 to 314 looks a little bit more realistic to me in terms of the top speeds. Carlos Sainz did that 19.9 really early in that sort of phase of the session. I think Vettel was the first guy out on softs, and he did a 20.7, which is why I say, you know, the Aston Martin, not too bad. And then Carlos went out and did the 19.9, which kind of put everything into perspective. And then he didn't go out again on the soft tyre. They put fuel in the car then, and he was ready. He was the first guy out doing the long runs with fuel, and he kept the soft tyres on actually for the fuel line, as I said, to then get a lot of homework for Ferrari. So he wasn't out, you could argue, as the track was getting a little bit quicker. So I think that's why you see Carlos Sainz there. And Max, don't know what to say about Max really. He did have a free run at that point, but I don't know how much fuel he had in the car. I'm not saying there was sandbagging, but you know, 20.0, top speed 314. When we know how quick the Red Bull is in a straight line. To me, that's possibly had a bit of fuel in that car. Fernando Alonso, 20.2. Yep, very good. Another Spaniard. A lot of Fernando fans in the grandstand. Good to see. A lot of blue. And then Sergio finally got into the car. And he was really good, actually. He got straight into it. And within about 3 laps, he was on it. And did it 20.6. So, yeah, you know, that's what you'd expect, isn't it? Good old Serge. Sebastian Vettel at 20.7. Esteban Ocon, underlining that Alpine are set for a pretty good weekend, 20.7. And I put Mick Schumacher in. He was P10, and I thought he looked really good in the Haas again. So it's good to see Mick, excuse me, just have another drink. It's good to see Mick continuing that, because I can't imagine what it's like driving for Haas. I'm pretty sure that every time he goes out, it's don't bend it. If you do, is the bill sort of thing. And, it's not a great way for a young driver to be really finding his confidence. And I think despite all that, Mick's doing an outstanding job now. And he's, right up there with Kevin. And that's saying something, isn't it? To be that good in the Haas. So full marks to Mick Schumacher. And then finally, and I think this is the crux of the day, this was FP2, long fuel runs. And we got quite a few drivers there to look at, and quite a lot of runs actually. But look at that comparison between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. Now, Max leaning on it on his first lap out on the mediums, first flying that 25.1. I mean, that to me kind of says a lot. It says everything really about the day. There's Charles doing 25.8. And he's doing that 25.8 still with that very long corner, making turn 3 a very long corner, and asking a lot of the left rear of the car. So, yeah, I mean, to me, that means Max is heading for another great weekend. So, and then you look at the lap times, and they're not that far apart, really. I mean, Max is basically quicker on average everywhere, and he's very consistent. But then so Charles, and Charles not too bad. If you look at their last laps, quick laps, 26.5 Max, and at that point, Charles doing 27.0, so he's half a second quicker by the end of the long run. And that, to me, is no surprise, given what I've just been saying about the way they're using the tyres. They had Carlos on the soft tyre, which is why he was so quick earlier on 25.0. Then he's in the 25.6s. Bottom line is the soft tyre's looking very good, certainly on the Sainz Ferrari as a race tyre. Everybody else, well, not everybody else, I think Sergio Perez on the soft tyre as well, 25.6, not as quick. But then again, also 26.8 on his last lap on the soft tyre, which is again showing that tyre's not bad at all, and very consistent as well. A classic Sergio Perez, 26.2, 26.2, 26.6, 26.7, 26.5. And then the two Mercs, very quick in their first runs. But look at Lewis there. Yeah, with fuel in the car, with more weight in the car. I don't know, less bouncing probably. 25.1. George 25.8. I mean, 25.1 is as quick as Max went on the same fuel load, really. So that's good news for Mercedes and kind of for Lewis Hamilton as well. George, though, very quick and very consistent, sort of Sergio Perez like in his consistency, 26.2, 26.7, 26.7, 26.9, 26.6, 26.8. Really impressive to watch that or to see that. And Lewis just the same, he's 26.1, 26.2, 26.6. So Lewis looking really good with fuel on board. He'd be thinking, I guess, the car's even better with fuel. I'm anticipating that they'll still be saying there's a lot more to be done, but I think kudos to Mercedes there because they seem to have given George and Lewis, or is it Lewis and George? No, George and Lewis, probably. A pretty good race car for this weekend. Let's see how it goes. Valtteri Bottas not there because he stopped quite early on in FP2, puff of smoke out of the back of the Ferrari engine in the Alpha as he came off the power, I think it was, right at the end of the pit straight and pulled to one side. That delayed practice a little bit, but otherwise it was a pretty drama-free session, give or take the odd run into the gravel track. Lando Norris, particularly one of those, but otherwise it was pretty good. So yeah, looking forward to tomorrow for qualifying, and then of course the race on Sunday. I'll be doing a video on both days. And speaking of videos, a little bit of news. We'll continue with our YouTube channel exactly as it is, hopefully getting better all the time, trying to do a better job for you guys. But also we are doing something new as well. We're going on to the Twitch platform at the beginning of June, and that's where we're going to focus on live, interactive streaming with you, the fans. Only the live stuff on Twitch and everything else that hopefully you know and love on the YouTube channel. So we'll be splitting it that way. There is actually a channel out there. We have registered a channel called Peter Windsor on Twitch. But I'll give you more details as we get nearer the time, exactly as to how you get to the channel and you can start loading up questions to me. But it will be live, and sometimes I'll be doing it on the road, sometimes I'll be doing it on a mobile phone, sometimes I'll be doing it here in the studio. But hopefully that's a whole new area that everyone can enjoy. I'm certainly looking forward to it. And the first live show scheduled to go out on June the 1st. We haven't actually got the time yet, so watch this space for the time. But anyway, enough of that. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow as we look at qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix.